Eye on South Asia is brought to you by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, together we'll go far.
Hello and welcome to Eye on South Asia. I'm Bhavna Vanan.
And I'm Sanjeev Pandya.
Every week we'll bring to you the latest news, events, and happenings with South Asians in North America. Sanjeev, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about our headline for this week, and it's about the shooting that happened in Wisconsin last week at the Gurdwara.
Very sad and very tragic.
Very tragic. And what happened was a gunman came into a Gurdwara during its Sunday service, and he opened fire, and 6 people had been fatally wounded, several others injured, along with a police officer.
Exactly.
And there's a latest development on this story, which happens to be that earlier it was said that the gunman had been killed by a police officer, and it's now being found that he had killed himself.
Correct. This happened Sunday, I think, right before noon, when they were getting ready for their normal Sunday service, and that's when it happened. Gunman walked in a Gurudwara in Wisconsin with a 9mm gun, and he started shooting people. So at the end of the day, 6 people died, and there were reports that gunman was killed by police officer because a gunman actually had injured one of the police officers, but his backup police officer shot at him, and then all along they were saying, FBI and the police and everyone saying that police officer shot the gunman, but now there is a latest development that gunman actually had killed himself. Police officer shot at him and several rounds of bullets, but then finally gunman actually had killed himself. And this is a sad and a tragic, because gunman was a white man in his 40s, ex-army veteran, and no one knows the motive.
Exactly. And this has been labeled in some circles as a domestic terrorist incident.
Right.
And it's really sad because, as you mentioned, the gunman was an ex-army personnel,
Right.
and you would expect that these people would be fighting for the country's citizens. And here we are with a group of minorities, you know, Sikhs, and again, a hate crime, you know.
He was actually connected with some hate crime groups. This incident, yes, like you said, that has been labeled as a domestic terrorism, which I think is a growing concern in the U.S. They will have to figure out why is this happening, and what really causes this gunman to go out and start shooting at people. This happened exactly 12 days after the gunman actually went into a theater in Colorado and shot some 15 people or so. This specific incident I think has been highlighted in all over the world, especially in India, and there have been prayers and vigils held for the victims of this event.
Right, and these sorts of events are still continuing after 9/11, and it's again another case of mistaken identity where the Sikhs are being mistaken for Muslims. In either case, it wouldn't be in any way justified, such a shooting, whether it's Muslims or Sikhs or Hindus. You know, it's a hate crime, and hopefully there'll be an investigation into this rightfully labeled domestic terrorist incident, you know.
Right. But, I'm not sure, Bhavna, if we'll ever find out real motive behind this. Sikhs are the 5th largest religion in the world. There have been some 30 million followers all around the world. In Wisconsin, there have been only 2,500 to 3,000 families living in Wisconsin. But what really caused this gunman to go out in Gurudwara on Sunday, which is the busiest day, and right before their prayers in late morning, early afternoon prayers to shoot at people? No one knows.
Right. I mean, we can only hope that these incidents would not happen in the future, or
Right.
at least people's lives would not be put in danger like this.
True. And our thoughts and families, of course, goes out to victims and their families.
Exactly. So we're going to move on to our next story. Are India and the U.S. on a brink of a trade war? This is a very interesting title, considering the fact that the U.S. and India have been on a little bit of a rift in terms of their relationship. So after several years of the U.S. trying to curb outsourcing and trying to gain the confidence of the U.S. citizens
Right.
when it comes to employment and their own, the confidence of their own politicians as well. You know, the U.S. and India are at a rift, and India wants to bring in more exports from the U.S. And the U.S. wants to, you know, tailor down this outsourcing, and they see India and it's developing so quickly, at least in the past it has been, and they want to, you know, develop their own workforce. And several incidents, such as the U.S. increasing fees for professional services with H-1B and L-1 visas, and some export issues with poultry and the steel industry
Right.
are an issue when it comes to the U.S. and India.
Right.
So, you know, this is the question. Are they on a trade war? So what do you think about that?
Well, this, you know, world's oldest and the largest democracies in the, you know, world, I think they are really locking horns with this trade war. And the one thing for sure, U.S. and the President Barack Obama really not happy with this outsourcing thing. And I think he's mentioning that, he's making it very clear during his campaign speeches all over, and even TV ads also, that outsourcing has to stop, has to be reduced rather. And he's been attacking his opponent Mitt Romney, saying that, you know, if he's elected, then outsourcing will continue, will rise, and that's not in the best interest of U.S. And just like you said, that India also, you know, wants to export other things to U.S. So they both are kind of locking their horns in an unprecedented manner, which both countries will have to find a way to solve it. But this is going to be an interesting, but, you know, not so kind of serious trade war that they are into it.
And what happens, especially during election times, is that the U.S. tends to become more protectionist, so they're becoming more concerned about their domestic issues, and they start to rile up all this patriotism.
Especially at this time.
Exactly.
Yep.
So maybe this headline might be kind of contextual based on this election and what's happening around it. So it might not be a trend or something to foresee in the future.
Like I say, it's not going to be that serious.
Right. So we want to discuss now 30,000 illegal Indian immigrants. What's going to happen to them?
They're going to benefit
They're
from
going
this
to
Obama
have,
administration policy.
yes, they're going to have some benefits
Right.
with Obama's new policy for deferring deportation.
Right.
So what they'll be able to do is those who are 15 years or older will be able to file for deferred action for 2 years.
Right.
And instead of being deported immediately, those who are at risk, they will be able to partake in other things that are available to U.S. citizens, such as education and employment opportunities as well.
True.
So,
And this is actually, you know, a survey data from U.S. Census Bureau's Migration Policy Institute. Altogether, I think 1.76 million throughout USA, right, will be benefiting from this policy. India and I believe Korea, you know, they are the highest ones with 30,000 each from both of the countries. You know, out of the 1.76 illegal immigrants.
exactly. Mexico tops the the chart in terms of the
Right.
absolute
So
highest.
that's what I meant to say. These
Yeah.
two countries outside Latin America.
Okay.
So
yeah.
in Latin America, then you have countries like Mexico, and then you have El Salvador and Guatemala with $50,000 to over $100,000 depending on the country. They will benefit out of this policy. But the question is this policy because of the election year or because of securing their votes for future election? It is a little bit unknown and not so clear from the Obama administration.
Right.
But right now it seems like at least 30,000 Indians would benefit from this policy.
Right. As you mentioned, the illegal immigrants don't really have voting power. So is it with their relatives that they would feel more attached to
Like I
this
say,
group?
it's very unclear. I really don't know exactly what their criteria is and what's going to come out of this policy.
Right. Well, they're saying that it would be able to create some educational and employment opportunities
Sure.
for these people in the
Sure.
long term. So
Exactly.
let's see what becomes of it.
Okay.
So at the same time, U.S. presidential candidates are trying to reel in some PIOs. And what does PIO stand for?
Person of Indian origin.
Okay.
All right. So both candidates, Obama and Romney, are actually preparing their loyal followers, let's put it that way, to go out and campaign for them and raise, of course, millions of dollars. In one such case, Dr. Sampath Shivangi in the Mississippi raised like $1.7 million at a charity event for Mitt Romney. In the state like Mississippi, to raise $1.7 million, which is a huge, huge amount of money. And then, Dr. Shivangi also said that President Obama's tirade against India on outsourcing has really changed his image in majority of the Indian Americans. So they are going out with their message, and here Obama has as a couple of his regular followers from West Coast, California, Shefali Razdan Dugal and Kamala Harris, and they've been going out for Obama, raising funds and pitching in for Obama. So yes, Obama and Romney, they both are going after PIOs, person of Indian origin, to help them out in the campaign.
Yes, and the Republican Party seems to have really ramped up their importance for Indian Americans in their campaign.
Right.
Because in the past they haven't had as much diversity. So now they have the two governors, Nikki Haley and Bobby Jindal. Nikki Haley is going to be making a speech at the convention.
Right.
So
Yep.
they have several people lined up.
It's
for
going to
their
be
cause.
interesting.
All right. So we're going to be right back with some community news.
Sure.
And we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back on Eye on South Asia.
Eye on South Asia is brought to you by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, together we'll go far.